Hey YouTube, this is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and we've got your Week 13 start and sit video for the wide receiver position. Again, if you have not already, make sure you check out our start and sit video for the quarterback and running back. We have 2 weeks left of the regular season and then the playoff start. So everything you do, of course, will matter, and make sure you are paying attention to everything, whether it be injuries, whether it be any breaking news of possible different starters, and then of course, hopefully checking out these type of videos to help you guys get the right lineup. Now, these are your obvious starts at wide receiver. These guys should be starting no matter what, whether it be a situation based, always matchup based. And of course, if they're the wide receiver one that gets plenty of targets, they should be in your lineup. Now, the first receiver I believe is going to be a good start this week is going to be Christian Kirk versus the Lions. Now, Kirk almost has been an obvious start almost every single week, just because of the ability of getting plenty of targets his way, but he has had some games where he's underperformed. Now, the Lions allow 39.5 points and 190 receiving yards to receivers, also allowing a receiving touchdown per game as well. Now, this is a great game for Kirk to get back into kind of being the main target for Lawrence. Zay Jones dominated last week. And that's not something that you normally see. Now, Christian Kirk still got plenty of targets. He still saw 9 targets last week. He only had 4 receptions, though. He just didn't have the same connection that he normally has with Trevor Lawrence. And I think that's going to get turned around in this game. So I like Christian Kirk a lot. You could also play Zay Jones as well if you feel comfortable with him and you've got him as maybe a third receiver or maybe as a flex if you don't have any other great options. I still like Zay Jones as a nice little flex in there as well. Now, another receiver I recommend this week is going to be Garrett Wilson versus the Vikings. This should be scripted where the Vikings are up and the Jets are forced to throw. All right. And if that's true, that's one thing that I give an advantage to Garrett Wilson. Garrett absolutely has become the wide receiver one for the Jets. He looked really good last week with Mike White at quarterback. Mike White should obviously get the start again this week. He's the GOAT over there. And the Vikings allow the 5th most points to wide receivers with 39.2 points. They also allowed the most receiving yards to receivers at 197 yards. So I expect him to probably see 8 to 10 targets in this game. Could be even more. Again, depending on how big of how big up the game this Vikings game is. Because I think realistically the Jets have a decent defense. I just don't know if they're going to be able to handle the Vikings offense at all. But I do like this game. I like this matchup for Garrett Wilson. I like the matchup for Mike White as well. I know people have asked about him. So I do like him as a good play. Now, another receiver I have as a good start is going to be George Pickens versus the Falcons. Atlanta allows 39.4 points and 178 receiving yards to receivers. Now, in the last 3 games, the Atlanta Falcons have actually held receivers to 21 points per game, which has actually been a phenomenal aspect. The Falcons defense has done really well. Now, I know that makes people somewhat nervous because you're dealing with a rookie receiver, rookie quarterback. But if you look at the matchups Atlanta has had in the last 2 out of 3 games where they've actually done pretty well defensively, they faced Chicago and Carolina. That's not a very impressive performance. I mean, you got obviously Fields playing well, but mostly through his legs. He's not passing the ball. So again, of those 3 games, you had Chicago and Carolina as your opponents. So Atlanta's defense looks a little skewed. I still think they're one of those defenses that struggle. And that's why I like George Pickens a lot. You're going to probably start Deontay Johnson as well, just because he's going to get probably the most targets. But George Pickens actually benefits a lot, mostly on the deep passes. He gets good amount of targets, but he gets looked at down the field. He's that 20-plus yard receiving, but where Deontay is probably 5 to 10. If you watch any of the Steelers games, George Pickens is the big play guy. So I like him as a nice little start this week. Now, as far as my sits, I've got Chris Olave versus the Bucs. The Bucs are about middle of the pack against the defense, or against the pass, holding receivers to 143 receiving yards. In the last couple of games, they held Cooper and Lockett under 16 points in fantasy. And those are pretty good receivers. Olave is also one of the few weapons left for the Saints, besides Kamara. So realistically, the defense is going to make sure they're focusing on covering Olave. I don't think they're worried about the Saints offense at all with Andy Dalton at quarterback. So I think they're going to obviously make sure they have double coverage on Olave, making sure they're covering Kamara, and that's pretty much it. So I don't like Chris Olave as a start this week. if you don't have any other receivers, obviously you've got to play them. But if you have other options, I would definitely look at something else. Treylon Burks is another receiver I'm looking at sitting this week against the Eagles. Eagles are a tough defense. They are able to create pressure to prevent easy lanes or timing for Burks and Tannehill. Eagles also have held receivers as a group under 140 receiving yards. Now, there's a chance Burks gets plenty of targets because if the Eagles are up big and the script kind of goes that way, he's going to be force-fed some targets. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the Titans are obviously going to try to run the ball and kind of do what Houston did, where Houston was almost successful in beating them, which is they controlled the running game and using Derrick Henry as that play. So again, based off of what I think the matchup will end up being and how the game's going to play out, I think the game will be closer than than most people think, because the Titans actually have a pretty good defense. I think they are going to run the ball a lot for Tennessee. And I think it will be a touchdown, maybe 10-point difference, and that's not going to force enough where Tannehill has to throw the ball a lot. So I don't like Treylon Burks this week. Another receiver I'm sitting is Michael Pittman versus the Cowboys. Dallas does a great job against receivers, holding them to under 140 receiving yards combined, keeping receivers under 15 points in 3 of the last 4 games. So they've done a really good job against receivers. Trayvon Diggs has done a phenomenal job. Now, he doesn't necessarily always follow the number one receiver. They typically play a lot more zone. That's kind of the defensive scheme, but he's done a really good job. Watson's probably the only game I can think of in the last 4 games that had a phenomenal game. And Christian Watson, that was just one of those, crazy games. So realistically, the defense has done a really good job. And let's be honest, Matt Ryan gets hit a lot. That offensive line is struggling for the Indianapolis Colts, and the Cowboys are the number 1 team with sacks. You got Micah Parsons, Armstrong, Lawrence. I mean, these guys are going to go after Matt Ryan, which is only going to hurt Michael Pittman as far as getting in that rhythm and being on the same page. A lot of quick passes. They're going to obviously try to run the ball. They're going to try to use Jonathan Taylor to kind of control it. Like, again, that's one weakness the Cowboys do have is against the run. So for me, Michael Pittman, I'm putting him on a bench. Now, I don't really have any sleepers this week. I kind of looked through all the different matchups and things like that. I don't really have any necessarily crazy sleepers that I feel is going to be a good one this week. But if you guys do have any sleepers you think are a good start, hit us in the comments down below. Share your wealth of knowledge down there. Help everybody out. Again, we're here to help get everybody to the fantasy playoffs. Now, if you guys have any questions of your lineups, of course, hit us up in the comments down below. This is your start and sit video here. So hopefully this has helped you kind of get a better understanding of who you should be playing this week. If you guys haven't already, make sure you check out our start and sit running back and start and sit quarterback video as well to get you help in those lineup questions. And again, hit us in the comments. That's what we're here for. Ask away. We're trying to give you as much stats and information to get you guys the right decision. And that way you guys can, again, get a nice little victory. If you guys did enjoy the content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that notification bell is on. And of course, don't forget to hit the like button. It's greatly appreciated. Again, check out our start and sit videos, and I'll check you guys out next time.